Let me start off by saying my name is Bruce Harrell. I'm the mayor of the city of Seattle, and thank you for being here in this, well, I was going to say warm afternoon, at least a sunny afternoon. Thanks for being here for us to discuss some strategies we have in place in our work here at Woodland Park. When I took office in January, we openly talked about this gem known as Woodland Park and the neighborhoods surrounding it as being the kind of gem that we wanted to make sure that we protected. And where people unfortunately had to be housed here, we wanted to find them housing. And we wanted to lead, of course, and you've heard me say this time and time again, and you'll hear it time and time again, lead with compassion and lead with our hearts. And a lot of these people standing with me today are certainly exemplify the kind of approach we want to take as we address the crisis of the hour, which is homelessness. And we know that the term homelessness could describe so many events that occurs in a person's life when they are homelessness. We could talk about the causes, but we've had that discussion many times in this city. Today is not a victory lap. It's far from it. What it is it's a narrative that this is the Seattle we will build, leading with compassion, housing people, getting them the treatment. I'm all for statistics when we have them available. In this particular effort here, and I have many people to thank, and I'll thank a few in a moment, that we had 89 referrals, the most referrals from any encampment removal in our city's history. This is what we want to highlight today, which is a critical step toward progress and permanent housing and treatment. We had 60 referrals to tiny house villages, 25 referrals to enhanced shelters, 4 relocations to permanent housing alternatives, and 89 total connections to shelter or housing. And again, this is the kind of work we want to do in Seattle to get us on the right track to help everybody. Now, Councilmember Strauss, I'm very pleased that as a member of the legislative body, Councilmember Dan Strauss is here, and he can speak to more of the details of our approach. But I'll tell you, this approach, we believe, makes sense for this beautiful city that we love, known as One Seattle. Now, we're extremely grateful for the partnership we have with the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. Marc Dones is here. REACH. I want to particularly call out David Delgado for exemplifying the kind of leadership we want. He stands out among many superstars in doing this kind of work, and I want to give David a special shout out. Can you raise your hand, David, for those that don't see you? Thank you, David. I want to thank the Phinney Neighborhood Association and so many others who just stepped up. Everyone has a role to play, and when we have our One Seattle Day this Saturday, this is the kind of approach we're going to take here in Seattle. Many hands on deck is what you hear me saying, because government cannot do it alone. I want to thank staff for their incredible work. My staff in the Harrell administration and so many city employees for just, again, exemplifying the kind of work we want to see. Our unified care team, our field coordinators, our HOPE team, all our city employees. We have departments. As you know, we created an interdepartmental kind of team, a new kind of team consisting of parks. We have Christopher Williams here. This, again, demonstrated decades and decades and decades and decades, and he's old. Decades of leadership. Human Services Department, SDOT, SPU, our fire department, SPD, our IP team, all of our coordinated efforts. And when I speak with these, we had a breakfast about a week ago with all of our unified care team members. We had a breakfast, and I said, you're on the front line doing this work, and I have to look in your eyes and make sure that you're doing it with the spirit with which we want to do it. That spirit is not motivated by anger. It's motivated by love, and I'm never afraid to use terms like faith, hope, and love. I believe that for us to be sustainable, we have to wake up every single day. We work 7 days a week to make sure that we are taking care of the people who deserve it the most. So having said that, Woodland Park is a gem of our city. Whether you want to play tennis here or soccer here or just take a stroll, a walk, take a walk around here and say some real good things about the city, this is where you will do it. If you want to criticize the city, this is also, you don't do it here, you do it somewhere else. No, in all seriousness, we subject ourselves to criticism. That's what we sign up to do. But I tell the city, people over and over and over. Trust that we will use data, we'll use compassion, we'll lead with our hearts. So now the other components of a great park system, we care about that too. The cutting of the grass, the opening of the restaurants, the vibrancy. Park restoration and park in our backlog and maintenance is also part of what we do. Our restroom cleaning is not one thing just to hopefully house people that have been housing there. It's another thing to now make sure your investment strategy and your employees are keeping up the gem. You don't waste an asset, you invest in an asset, you maintain an asset. So that's the other component of what we're trying to do. So I believe I'm inviting now, is it Councilmember Strauss? Councilmember Strauss to say a few words. And again, I want to close these remarks by saying thank you, Councilmember. See, that's a fan right there. They like what we're doing right there. See, that was right on cue. Councilmember Strauss, it would be honored if you share a few words with us.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I open with my remarks, Mayor Harrell's the executive we've been waiting for. In the last 24 hours, he's met with the President of the United States and the President of Iceland, bring our city the executive leadership that we need, hiring smart, capable people and trusting what their recommendations are. So good afternoon, I'm Councilmember Dan Strauss. Welcome to District 6. I represent Green Lake, Greenwood, Phinney, Crown Hill, Fremont, Ballard, and so many other micro neighborhoods. I know the mayor and I agree on lots of things. This is the best district in the city. I know you're partial to District 2.
Today it is.
Today it is. And we're one Seattle. And that means that we all work together throughout the city. This is my community, and I'm not insulated from the things that are happening here, both good and bad. I want to first, as the mayor said, start by thanking our partners in this collaborative approach, David, Aslan, Josh, and so many people on our HOPE team, as well, and everyone from Evergreen Treatment Services REACH, Phinney Neighborhood Association, King County Regional Homelessness Authority, Mayor Harrell, and Deputy Mayor Washington. Our phased homelessness outreach plan at Woodland Park ended last week, and over 4 months of intensive outreach, we moved over 80 people inside, out of the park, into transitional or permanent supportive housing and shelter. This is the largest number of people connected with shelter during an encampment removal in city's history. This is the largest number of people connected with shelter and housing during an encampment removal in city's history. When we lead with a human-centered approach, we see these results. This program worked because of Mayor Harrell's commitment to meeting people's needs and addressing homelessness with urgency. In his inaugural speech, he tasked Deputy Mayor Washington with delivering results. Mayor Harrell, in 4 short months, we are seeing and feeling the results from your administration. I want to especially thank your leadership of Deputy Mayor Washington. Our phased approach, created by King County Regional Homelessness Authority, was piloted at City Hall Park last year. Ballard Commons was our proof of concept this model works, and Woodland Park is our demonstration that when we understand a person's needs and connect them with the shelter and housing that meets these needs, people come inside by the hundreds, and refusals are few. How do we do this work? In January, we created a by name list. In February, we finished the needs assessment and began moving people inside and out of the park. This encampments removals timeline was dictated by shelter throughput. We did not have shelter expansion during this time like we did at Ballard Commons Park. By relying on shelter throughput, it extended the amount of time it took to address the park. And during this time, more people moved into the park. In the last 2 weeks before the end of Phase 3, we surged our efforts to account for everyone in the park and successfully brought 89 people inside since January. These people have been connected to the shelter or housing that meets their needs. We cannot take pity on people and leave them unforsaken. No matter what their lot in life may be, these are people, and we need to treat them as such. And that's why a human-centered approach works. And that's why we see it proven to work again. This experience reinforced the lessons we knew going in. This work's success is dependent on adequate shelter availability. And candidly, we need more. The pandemic ended our use of basic congregate shelter, which is an important and positive first step. Now our base shelter option is 24/7 enhanced shelter, where you can have a pet, your possessions, and you can live with your partner. This is a better model than what we've previously worked with. And additionally, we know that people's most desired place to come inside to is a personal space, a place that has 4 walls and a door that they can lock. And candidly, our city does not have the shelter capacity we need, and we are doing more now than ever before. Our shelter throughput is dependent on housing resources, from permanent supportive housing to very low-income housing. Last year was the first year we met our target of funding $200 million per year in affordable housing. This comes from the Jumpstart tax, mandatory housing affordability, the city's housing levy, and COVID relief funds. We cannot lose sight of funding our housing needs, and we need to scale up the shelter capacity while permanent housing is built. I'm confident that this phased approach model we used at Woodland Park and Ballard Commons Park, which gives professional outreach workers the time needed to build relationships and connect people to the services that they need, is why so many people accepted shelter referrals. I believe this model will stand the test of time and is a model that we should use as a city going forward. Mayor Harrell's office and I worked collaboratively with agencies and neighbors for months to reach a positive outcome. And this collaboration allowed for a unified team of governmental and non-governmental entities to work together to reach this positive conclusion. We would not have been able to shelter over 80 people without the partnership from Evergreen Treatment Services REACH, Phinney Neighborhood Association, King County Regional Homelessness Authority, and Mayor Harrell and his Deputy Mayor, Tiffany Washington. Before closing, I want to thank the outreach workers, the community members, Clean Cities team, the Human Services Department, and Seattle Parks and Recreation for their effort in this park. A lot of their work oftentimes goes unseen, and I want to take this moment to give them the recognition that they deserve. I'll close by saying, I've said for a long time our parks, libraries, and buses should not be our de facto homeless shelters because we need the shelter and housing to be scaled at the size of the crisis we face. Success is not clearing a park, success is bringing people inside. Success is making systems change so that we're able to better meet the people's needs of our community and to make sure that we are better suited to address homelessness. We're here to create a welcoming park for everyone, whether you're down and out or up on your luck. And we know that today we have not solved homelessness in District 6 or in Seattle. There's more work to be done, and my next focus is in the Industrial District and 8th Avenue Northwest. So again, I want to thank Deputy Mayor Washington, Mayor Harrell, Evergreen Treatment Services REACH, David, Aslan, Josh, Phinney Neighborhood, and King County Regional Homelessness Authority. I'll now pass the podium to Marc Dones of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Marc Dones. I want to echo what Mayor Harrell said, which is that this can't be a victory lap because not everyone is housed, right? And in homelessness, there is no such thing as a good press conference until everybody is housed, and today is not that day. However, what we have done in partnership is different, and it is important that we recognize that difference. And I am really, really happy to stand here and affirm that the number of shelter and housing exits from this work are the highest we have ever been able to achieve, and that the reason for that is that we took the time to get to know people. And I really want to uplift the work that the REACH team does because because we talk about systems and we talk about the improvement of systems, but at the core, this work has always been and will remain people helping people. And when we lose sight of that, when we fail to execute on that as the basic premise, we do not do right by the people we're seeking to serve, and frankly, we don't even do right by ourselves. Morally, ethically, there's a whole conversation there. We don't have time for it today. But what I will say is that this time, as we did in Ballard Commons, as we did at City Hall Park, we prioritized getting to know what people needed. We prioritized generating placements for them based on those needs, and we let what the system could do, that bed availability, dictate the speed at which we moved rather than trying to force a false outcome. The results for that really do speak for themselves. The fact that other people moved into the area actually is not a problem. It is a marker of success. People came to a place where they saw a good thing happening. That's what we need to replicate. We need to earn the trust of the people experiencing homelessness in our community. We have broken that trust. We must restore it by doing this again and again and again until everyone is housed. And I believe that that day is coming. It is why I took this job. It's why I am running out of town yet. And it is why the people who are up here are still here. Because, again, as was said, when we take jobs like this, we do invite criticism, and that's appropriate. We are public officials. But we keep coming back because we do believe there is a reason to be here. We believe that there is something better. We believe that this county, right, this nation perhaps, can do better tomorrow than it did today. And this work is exactly that. This is better today than it was yesterday. I want to particularly thank Councilmember Strauss, who reached out towards the end of last year and said, can we get on the phone, have some conversation? And from that genuine outreach, what we got was first weekly coordinating calls, and then a weekly coordinating call with 6 other sub-meetings around it. And in all of those, the focus was work. The focus was, what are we learning? Who do we know? Do we understand their needs? And I will say, in over 15 years of public service, I have never seen a sitting council member and a deputy mayor do the work. Not once. So this is also extraordinary. And thank you for your leadership. I also want to thank the Parks Department and Miss Donna Waters, who every week was on these calls saying, oh yes, we can help people get their trash taken out. Oh yes, we can help with that. We can make sure that people's needs are being met, that the basics, right, are being taken care of. And again, was approaching it with consistent humanity, was talking about what the Parks Department team was doing in order to connect with people, to better understand their needs, and to build around them the structures that we all take for granted when our trash magically goes away every Thursday, that could happen here too. Thank you. And the last thing I just want to say, close where you begin. This cannot be the end. This cannot be where we stop. This cannot be a victory lap. This has to be a proof of concept that we use to scale resources and to scale will to get this done and to end homelessness in this county. Thank you.
And now Chloe, who needs no introduction apparently.
Hi everyone, Chloe Gale from REACH program at Evergreen Treatment Services, and I have the real honor of helping to support this incredible team that's been on the ground every day for months and months since the beginning of this year, and actually for years before that. We've been here for 25 years doing street outreach, and we've learned a lot. And I want to kick off also by saying how incredibly grateful I am to follow some tremendous leadership and dedication and persistence, because this work is not done. It's been here for decades, and unfortunately we have a long way out of it, and it's going to require that kind of persistence and drive and commitment to move. So I want to lead in the same place as many of other folks here have said, which is at the REACH program, we are not interested in moving people around. We are interested in moving them inside to the place where they get to live healthy lives, where they can heal, where they can recover, and the place that suits them, their families, and their needs. I also want to celebrate this collaboration. This is an incredibly disparate stakeholder group. I think that it was very intentional to build this table to be very inclusive, and that means that we have not agreed every day, but the persistence of showing up week after week after week and agreeing to disagree and work through all of these challenges has been very powerful. And this, I believe that this system and this process is going to succeed other places. A couple other folks who were here that we became very, very invested in were the folks who were already here in the community delivering aid and care. So some of those were the North Seattle Neighbors Group that was here for a long time, and the Lived Experience Coalition for Homelessness. And I just want to acknowledge that what we've seen at Reach in all of these neighborhoods is that communities want to be involved and they want to solve the crisis of their neighbors that they see in their front yard. So this park was not like a return to something. This park was a, how do we bring our neighbors inside? And we saw that every day in how the neighborhood showed up. We've named a bunch of them. The Phinney Neighborhood Association was here. Councilmember Strauss really took a leadership role in making this happen. And I believe every neighborhood can help get on board to solve homelessness in their community. Finally, my job here, and Ashlyn, Josh, and David Delgado have been mentioned multiple times, but really our purpose is to elevate the experiences of the people who lived here. That's why we're here every day. Not talk about ourselves, but talk about who needs to come inside and why. And I'm just going to share one story of a gentleman named Steve, who had been in this park and been in this homeless for years and years, and had been a resident in this park for multiple months throughout the pandemic, and had become quite ill and was very outspoken, empowered person. And he would say regularly, the homeless providers are useless, outreach is useless, I've tried over and over, I've gone to shelters, it didn't work out. And our staff showed up on the ground and connected with him, and he wanted nothing to do with them. He had experienced so much negativity from the system. I would like to say that the timeline of this process, our staff showed up, and the very first thing that we were able to do was listen. We spent days listening and understanding what were the needs of the community in this park, and that's where we start, to connect with people and engage with them. Steve was not interested, was not engaging for a while, and our staff could see that he was suffering from medical conditions, and we have a nurse at Neighbor Care Health who was able to come out on the ground with us. She came in and spent a day with him talking through what his health conditions were, and that ability to respond to what he needed in the moment, which included a cancer diagnosis, really significant daily challenges he was facing, and say, I can get you help, I can get you support, and bring the care to him, actually was the pivoting activity that caused him to come inside. He said, I'm willing to go, let's go to the shelter. Unfortunately, the shelter bed wasn't ready that day, everybody. So this is the kind of persistence that we've had to see. And I want to name the Hope team from our city, who were also on the ground, and Bradley in particular, daily on the ground with our team. When that shelter fell through, Bradley was immediately on the phone, and his job is to navigate the system and fix it. And he worked and worked, and we were able to get Steve inside. I will say Steve has been calling Josh every week to say how incredibly grateful he is, and he didn't believe this was possible. But I do want to say it is a really long-term process, and this time was critical, and I appreciate the leadership that kept some of the pressure at bay and stayed focused on the people in the park and how we move them inside. So finally, thank you all for including us, and I appreciate being here.
Hi, I'm Christy Beckley with the Phinney Neighborhood Association. We are a nonprofit located here in Northwest Seattle. We offer multiple childcare sites, preschools. We operate the Greenwood Senior Center, community programs and events, and social services. We're usually behind the scenes, where I like to stay, but we are really honored and proud to be part of this process to represent the community and the voices. Oftentimes it was asking the questions, the no way this isn't going to happen, the mistrust, the confusion. And so having a seat on the table, I can confidently say that there was a ton of dedicated people, as you've all seen, and a ton of work going about doing what we knew was right. So I really appreciate that I was part of this process. And I appreciate the willingness and the leadership of this team to do something different and to do, again, what we knew was right. The P&A has long been a place where we connect people. We're an organization that connects community to work together, to support each other, and to help solve our community issues. And so there's a few other folks. Chloe mentioned the behind-the-scenes folks, the community members, the mutual aid groups, the churches, that were here also in the park supporting the community. And I just wanted to make sure everyone that's been here and taking care of the community also got the recognition from today. At the P&A, we believe that everyone deserves to be included in a caring and supportive community. And so as our city is facing this housing crisis, it was really great to see sustainable solutions, both to restore the park as well as to support the people living in the park. It was also great for us to be involved so that we could help connect people to existing P&A services like our medical and dental and meals provided through the Hot Meal program, as well as unite neighbors in helping to support their community towards the community that they want to be part of. So moving forward, we hope to do more of that, connecting and listening and supporting. And there's ways that you all can do that. We're in the middle of a community survey right now at the P&A to help listen and learn what type of community we all want to work towards. But again, I echo all that's been said echo all that's been said, and that this was a meaningful and different process, and I hope everyone can see that. Thank you.
I believe that concludes our planned speakers, and as long as Mark and Tiffany are close by my side, I'll be more than happy to handle a few questions. Yes.
Shelter beds during your first 6 months in office. Where are you in meeting that specific goal?
Sure, and you'll be very pleased. I think the public will be very pleased with our dashboard that I've looked at a draft that we'll release in a few weeks. I'm going to ask Deputy Mayor Washington to perhaps give us some specifics on that.
Thank you. We're on track. That's easy. We've identified 1,000 shelter units or permanent supportive housing, tiny home villages. We're just waiting until our boss, Jamie Housen, lets us talk about it in a few weeks, but we're on track.
Yeah. And Deputy Mayor Washington, I want to say that some people were wondering where we were on that, and my cabinet knows my style. Let's put the work in. Let's do it. I'm not trying to chase headlines down. So we have a lot of data that we're going to show that we've been busy at work. That's what we do. And so I like integrity to data. And so what we'll be releasing very soon here will show what we've been doing. But I think the people of this city are seeing real results as we speak. So more to come. Jamie, will you help me on this a little bit? Because you do a better job of this. I never know who to call on it.
I'll ask a quick one. You talked about the 89 successful connections, but I'm wondering, are you seeing that this is the model that's the solution and not just pushing people elsewhere? Are you tracking the people not taking the assistance?
Yeah, pushing people around the city, pushing them from one tent to another, pushing them from one sidewalk to another is not the answer. It's not a best practice, it's not effective, it's not in the spirit of which we effectuate removals. That's why we do the outreach. That's why we have these fine volunteers. I think Mark described it as people getting to know people. I lead the city in an environment where people want quick results. And you've heard me say repeatedly that our results need to be sustainable. Upstream services, mental illness treatment, drug and alcohol treatment, early education for people in our educational system, looking at the triggers that could cause someone to be homelessness. This is sustainable work. So while we continue to be in somewhat of a crisis response mode, we also look at the upstream services and the long-term housing. It's all part of the continuum. So this sort of symbolizes our methodology, and you'll see more to come here in the future.
I don't have the latest stats, but as of earlier this week, it was 83. I guess now it's 89 folks moved out. Most of those moved in the last week before this, encampment was removed. So most of them, the majority, were not necessarily part of this outreach approach. So There's a sweep that I just passed by on the way here that's happening. Can you just respond to the criticism that this is more evidence that, when you have a lot of shelter, obviously people go, but for most people, there is no shelter. We just focused a lot of resources here.
Sure, again, I'm going to turn to maybe some bench strength on that answer, but I would just like to say that we don't do sweeps here in Seattle. But having said that, can I?
So to me, the fact that people came at the last minute, they came at the last minute because they saw there were resources. It's good news for me that people came at the last minute, and it's good news that we were able to give them the resources they need. I'm not sure what the question is in connection with the removal that you're talking about down the street, but
The only thing I would add, is that, as I said in my remarks, I think that people showing up someplace because they see resources and they see connection happening, and then and they see actual flow through, actually does say that this method works. I think that, again, from a how do we iterate, what is our proof of concept, right? What I think we'll be talking about next is, as we work to expand this, how do we think about either closing B&Ls earlier and making that clear to people, or frankly allowing for longer operation timeframes that semi-stabilize an entire site for a period of time. I will also say, right, as was said earlier, that part of what we allowed to dictate the timeline, and I remember when Deputy Mayor Washington and I talked about this at the very beginning, and she was like, we gotta, work with Councilmember Strauss. I said, cool, there is nothing available. How would you like to handle that? And then what we said is, we will let availability dictate the timeline, right? So even some of that last minute placement, right, was inside of what was available and new things that came online, right, in that time frame. So I would not describe that as a movement of resources. I would actually describe that as literally things came online that we were able to offer. And I think that is broadly a good strategy, that we allow the system's availability to dictate what we do, as opposed to trying to force function.
by name list.
By name list.
The model approach, and it was
I'm sorry, Chair Grace.
You're fine. If this is the model approach and it was a slower approach, does that mean that you will have a slower rate of clearing encampments going forward?
Yeah, the short answer is no, but I'm going to let my deputy mayor say a little more.
So what folks have to remember is we've seen some of the largest encampments in city history because we came out of a global pandemic. And so what it has taken to clear these areas are because of the number of people who sheltered in place for 2 years. We don't have anywhere near the size of the encampments that have been closed anywhere else across the city. And so we have regular shelter bed availability that can probably meet the needs on a regular basis. What we didn't have in some of these sites are 89 beds in one day, and so it had to be slower. So it depends on the number of people in sites. Bruce, you got ahead.
See that? You guys rotate those cameras over there. Okay. Yeah.
Mayor, I've been documenting all of the homeless encampment sweeps just in the past month.
I'm sure you
stayed
have.
in touch with many men and women who are saying they're going to come back. They're just going to move to another part of the city. What is your administration going to do if these campers come back to Woodland Park and some of the other areas that have already been cleared?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Cho, for the question. I want to make it clear, as I said on many stages, this is an American problem. It's not just a Seattle problem. It's a world problem going across the world. We are a welcoming city. My goal has never been to build a wall around this city and say, stay away from here, this is too good for anyone. We will treat people as we see as they come. We have resources in this city, in this region, and it's incumbent upon me as the mayor to make sure that I find the federal resources, the state resources, the philanthropic resources, the taxing authority, that I find the resources to treat people. So my goal has never been to build a wall and say, stay out. The spirit of Seattle, which makes us one Seattle, a unique city, is that we're a welcoming city. And I think that's why I was elected to lead this city. we understand there's still people that are housed now that are housing insecure. They're one check away from being homeless. So our upstream work becomes that critical. We understand there are kids in finishing high school this year that they don't know where they're going to live. So it's a journey, and hopefully we'll get at a good destination here, but we're up for it. We signed up for that. Yes, yes.
Come back. What's going to happen? Are your crews going to chase them out again? Are you going to remove them? How long? That's what neighbors want to know.
As I said earlier, under our administration, we don't sweep and we don't chase people out. We treat and we house, and that's what we will do. We will treat and we will house and we'll be welcoming. But let me also say, in the same breath, with the same level of commitment, these parks are our gems. I need sidewalks for people to be able to walk. They need to be wheelchair accessible. I need our children to be able to play in these gems we call parks. They're assets, and so one does not exclude the other. And I got to make that clear that this is not easy work. At some point, as Marc said, we won't take a victory lap until people are housed. So I get it, I get it, I get it. That's why we work so hard to get us on the right trajectory. And I think people are saying that. Everywhere we go, they're saying, you know, the problem is not solved, but we believe we are heading finally in the right direction. That to me is praiseworthy. If we believe we're heading in the right direction, we're effectuating the right policies, we have the right investment scheme, we're showing you the data, we're heading in the right direction. Yes, Jamie, can you help me out a little bit?
You want to keep going?
No, I don't. I want to go back to work.
Jackie, Doug, Sarah Grace, and we're done.
You had mentioned it would be a few weeks before we would see that dashboard. Do you have a firm timeline for when we could see your homelessness plan? And do you believe what we saw here at Woodland Park is part of that model for success moving forward?
Thank you for the question.
We haven't announced the date for the end of the month.
It'll be before the end of the month. There's 31 days in this month, I remind you. But sure. So yes, I can. So the data that we're preparing, and many of you know I spent a great deal of my professional career in technology. And so what we had thus far a few weeks ago just didn't meet my standards in terms of what I want to present. So you're going to look at housing units identified. You're going to look at the number of encampments that we've had to remove. You're going to see in the city where people are living unsheltered. You're going to see a strategy, if you will, sort of a template, if you will, on our housing strategy. And so remember, I think of these things in three pillars. One is the upstream services that we do. One is what we'll call crisis response, and the other one is long-term housing. So all three of those pillars are what we're trying to describe in an easy to understand format, but it's certainly because people are so, they're data hungry for the current state of affairs. It will show a lot of what we're dealing with right now.
Doug?
Hey, Doug.
Is there sort of a focus on North Seattle in particular? Do you feel like there's encampment rules are spread out around the city? Is it sort of complaint based, or how do you kind of see the overall arching, how every council district can expect, kind of PLC?
I understand the question, Doug, and while Councilmember Strauss should have and did clearly say this is the most important district in the city, I would remind my friend and colleague that we have 7 districts last I checked, and that in part of the plan we are describing the strategy on how we decide which areas we target and we hit and we try to treat people. And so it's not random, it's not one area of town, there's specific criteria that we'll describe. And that's part of our strategy that, when I started in January, quite candidly, there was not a shortage of encampments in this city. Let's just get it out there. And so part of the strategy was to decide what is the criteria by which we will address this fairly and with equity and with the lens of race and social justice. Not just who makes the loudest noise, but what makes sense from a housing, centering people first approach. So no, I'm not going to say one end of the town is prioritized over the other. that's not consistent with the criteria that you will soon see.
Okay, Sarah Grace, last question.
Sarah Grace gets 3 questions.
It's 2. Can you tell us how many people were connected with mental health and addiction services, and then what those other service offerings and support offerings looked like in this particular project?
Yes, I may need a little help on that one, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. We don't track at that level, and part of what you'll see in what the authority plans and how we look to expand what we call, what we currently call by name lists, which are literally right now lists, but will become something that is much more robust, is that what we are going to have is something that integrates at the client level. What do you need? How are we connecting you to it? And also allows, the good folks at REACH, for example, to communicate with folks at DESC about like, hey, we've talked to this person and this is what we think they need. And so the connection is seamless rather than the person re-explaining what their needs are at multiple junctures across the system. So that work is in flight. We partnered with our private sector partners in order to develop and field that as a technological solution. So eventually things like that will be answerable. But I will also say right now, so that you don't get your hopes up, I will never answer them because we will never give out that kind of data that you can track at the person level about people who were living in a single place, right? It'll only ever be available to the public and aggregate at the system level.
Can I ask in an aggregate way what that looked like, though? Was there a special need for any specific kind of service here?
Here.
Yes.
So in aggregate, I would say, and Chloe, you can speak to this, or David, right? But like in aggregate, I would say that this was not there was not a significant difference from what we see in a lot of places. A lot of physical health needs, a lot of behavioral health needs. These are the things that arise when folks are forced to live outside for long periods of time, right? And because I'm saying this, I want to be quite clear that when we look at the course of people's lives and how things develop, what we often see is that the behavioral health needs develop after the experience of homelessness, not before. So I really want to be clear with you all about what is the driver versus what is the symptom. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can. That's all right. I do want to name, because we do connect people to treatment services all the time, and that's a fair question. The deciding factor is what a person wants and where they want to start. So some people may want to start with a recovery program. Some people might want to start with some mental health care. Most people want to go inside to a safe place where they can then start to heal and recover. And it's very hard to bring those. I often say it's very hard for a mentally ill person to start to heal inside of a tent. So it is really about bringing people inside generally, but we also have nurses, as I mentioned in the story I talked about. We have mental health providers. We actually have a whole bunch of drug user health expertise, and this is one of the reasons that you work with professional clinical outreach programs that can bring all of those services outside and make sure people engage where they want.
Thanks, Chloe. Thank all of you for being here. Deeply appreciate it. Thank you for the work you're doing. Thank all of you. Saturday, one day of service, and always remember, we're building one Seattle. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Harrell.